What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the third official mixtape by J. Cole. Basically, this project is called Friday Night Lights, and it came out in the fall of 2010. Now, this is a particular hit mixtape. This is one that helped kick off J. Cole's career in a lot of ways. I mean, he had some earlier ones like the Warm Up and some of those type ones, but this is one that was a particularly big deal. It's got over 1 million downloads on DatPiff back in the day when that website was still kind of up and such. This was a pretty big deal around the time. J. Cole was one of the next ones that was going to blow up in like the early 2010s as far as that pitch can happen, and it built the hype for his Cole World, the Sideline Story album that came out in the fall of 2011. So this is one big deal. Had a hit single on here with Drake, which is pretty dope. So pretty good concept to get a lot of this, but it's just kind of a different pitch from some of the stuff that was going on. I do kind of feel like J. Cole was kind of a revolutionary artist just with the stuff that he was doing, and I didn't realize that he was like this as far back as like the early 2010s and late 2000s as far as that pitch can happen. I thought he changed after Born Sinner when he dropped like the 2014 Hills Drive album from 2014, something like that. I forget what that album Full Blown is called, but it's just kind of the concept. I do remember Cole World, Sideline Story, and Born Sinner, but I do remember those having a few more kind of nightclub bops and things like that on there. Just a lot more kind of vivid electricity and some pitches like that. But this particular project is pretty middle class, I'd have to suppose. It's just kind of the concept. I mean, this is a quality mixtape here. I do see the This is a quality mixtape here. I do see the appeal of it, but I would have to say it doesn't have any nightclub songs. This is kind of the concept of it. It's not really a full-blown social type project, and it's not really much of like an affable kind of outing and weekend type project as far as that pitch kind of happens. It has a lot of kind of middle class, just kind of like malaise and commerce. It's kind of like car after hours, or just either getting done with class or work or something like that. Just a lot of tunes that are more for like the pitch of like 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. type stuff, more so than like the full-blown aspect of something that you'd listen to at like 10 o'clock at night or some of those type pitches. This album is just not a full-blown shot in the arm as far as like the ambience. When it says Friday Night Lights, it's kind of ironic because this album for the most part is not really within that pitch of the concept of really doing that. It's not a bad project, it's just kind of the concept that I look after. I was almost wondering why there wasn't. I mean, I remember the song In the Morning. I do remember that song from I do remember In the Morning from Cole World in this particular project, but for the most part, this is kind of a lot more just kind of steadfast and just kind of workaday. I feel like J. Cole, at least on this particular project, I don't know a ton of J. Cole projects, but from what I was gathering here, he's kind of like a more middle class version of like the stuff that Kanye West and some folks like that kind of were. He's kind of like, the thing about this particular album that's pretty interesting about it is it's just very ghoulish and kind of ghostly, just within like a churchy kind of sense. It just has a lot of kind of ghastliness that kind of goes along with some of this stuff, and it's just interesting just because the aspect behind it is it's very middle class, just the approach of how it does it, but it's just kind of the concept that it just has like some kind of not necessarily horrorcore, but just some kind of leery and just overall grim type mentalities that just kind of feel like something that you would atone for or something like that, just within the aspect. Now Kanye West didn't really do that. He was soulful, but Kanye had a lot more pep in his step, and he just wasn't quite as malaise and quite as anguish, I'd have to say. But it's just an interesting pitch for J. Cole because it just has some of these malaise type songs. There's some ones on here like Before I'm Gone, Farewell, some of these type ones. I feel like Villamatic is kind of like that. There's a couple other ones I'd have to say. Friday Night Lights, the intro is pretty malaise, I'd have to suppose. There's just some ones on here that have that particular kind of pitch. I feel like Home for the Holidays, Cost Me a Lot. Just some of these kind of have some of that relative malaise, but it's just an interesting pitch to kind of get some of these. Do you like the concept of it? Just the moodiness of this particular project. I didn't see J. Cole as much of like an emo rapper, but I definitely do feel like he has some kind of moody kind of edginess that just works pretty well in addition to like his baffling kind of lyricism. So it's just a concept. He is a lyricist, pretty good concept to kind of have some of that on here. He's up there with like Kanye West and Kid Cudi and folks like that are some more kind of around the Philadelphia, Chicago type neighborhood type lyricists as far as some of those pitches kind of happen. So with it, Wale, some of those type folks, I'd have to say it's a good concept to kind of get some of this. But it's just kind of the aspect I look after. It's a good concept to kind of see here. It's an original Valve. This was unlike a lot of things that were kind of around in 2010. So this came out in November 2010. There weren't a ton of folks. I think apart from like Kanye West and maybe Drake, there just weren't a ton of folks that kind of had this particular pitch that J. Cole was trying to show off. So it's a good concept here. Now the efforts behind what this project laid out and the roads that this project paved is higher than the score I'm going to give this project because there were a number of blunders on here. I do feel like this was just more of a revolutionary project more so than the quality of what I felt with it, but still a concept that you don't want to ignore this project, and it does have some good stuff on here. So I just would have to say. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to talk about the single off this project, which is In the Morning. This is also on Cole World, like I was saying. Then we'll recommend the songs out of 20 that I recommend on here. Basically, I'll go ahead and tell you the songs I recommend. So basically, out of 20 songs on this particular mixtape, there are 10 songs I recommend. So it's about exactly half the project, I'd have to say. But we'll go ahead and talk about In the Morning first. So basically In the Morning with Drake is basically like a dreary kind of morning commerce bruiser. I'd have to say pretty great concept to kind of particularly see that one. It's just a great kind of emphatic makeshift standout cut, I'd have to say. This one's just a great emphatic kind of makeshift standout cut, I'd have to say. So this one is just some perfect commerce type music, I'd have to say. Great for like 7, 8 in the morning, some pitches like that. Just Target music, Starbucks music, Panera Bread type music, just stuff like that. Just kind of getting coffee, lattes, some stuff like that. Those kind of pitches of just kind of getting into like the morning bustle. I mean, I definitely feel like this is a pretty good niche for J. Cole. I would have liked to have gotten a few more songs like this particular one. This song was just such a standout. I would have liked to have seen like 2 or 3 or 4 more songs just like this one, because this would have been a pretty good concept to have seen more songs for like this particular one, just to see what J. Cole could have done with some more stuff like this. Drake fits this song perfectly. This is another good concept. This feels like a Drake song from like Take Care Days, something like that, just within that relative pitch. But this is definitely a good class of a song for J. Cole. This is just like a good initial kind of song that had him on his initial charting days and stuff like that. This was kind of out of nowhere, different from like the drill type rap sound that was popular in like 2010 and stuff like that, and the Eminem like recovery type style, some of those type ones. So this song is an original burst of energy that was probably one of the bigger rap songs like the early 2010s, I'd have to say. So it's a pretty good concept, great song to kind of hear, and just some great kind of morning makeshift and stuff like that, I'd have to say. So that's the concept about this particular project. So basically, I'm going to go ahead and recommend the 10 songs out of 20 I recommend on here. So those 10 songs would be Friday Night Lights, the intro, Before I'm Gone, You Got It, Villamatic, In the Morning, Best Friend, Cost Me a Lot, Home for the Holidays, Love Me Not, and Sea World. So some of these, like, because this is a mixtape, there are a couple of freestyles as far as some songs that kind of have some of those type pitches, just 2 of which, there's not many. This is mostly original material, but at least Villamatic was like Devil in a New Dress by Kanye West, which is Devil in a New Dress by Kanye West, which is a real excellent beat. This is a great song to kind of hear folks freestyle to. So this is a pretty excellent one to kind of get. J. Cole fits this song pretty damn well, I'd have to say. And then Sea World is a Tupac type song, which is off of Pain, I'd have to say. So this is another good concept. J. Cole kind of makes that song his own and like its own. J. Cole kind of gives that song some flavor in like his own way as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. So it's just a good concept to kind of get some of those. So I'd have to say, talk about some of these ones on here. Basically, like the Friday Night Lights intro is a pretty highlighted one. This is basically like a vivid kind of soul and churchy winter brush of a song. I had to say, great concept to kind of see this particular one. This is just a good steadfast commerce type tune. So this one's a pretty malaise type one. This one works pretty well with like In the Morning, some of those type pitches. I mean, this could probably be evening commerce as well. There's just a lot of evening commerce on here that works pretty well. But this is just a great concept to kind of see this particular one, just because I like the kind of moodiness of this particular song. It's just a great intro to kind of have, very wintry, churchy type stuff to kind of atone to and stuff like that, just to kind of be introspective. This is pretty much like a thinker's mixtape, I'd have to say. So if you're in thought and you just have a lot more malaise about you and you're just kind of ruminating, so this is a pretty great project for some ruminating just within that pitch, I'd have to say. It's not really smokers ruminating either. I mean, there's not really a ton of smoking songs on here. J. Cole says on this particular project that he smokes here and there. He's not like a heavy smoker as far as that pitch kind of happens. It's just kind of more, it's not really so much smokers, kind of roll ups and sweets, that sort of stuff. It's just kind of more ruminating just within the after hour sense of just kind of having some malaise thoughts on your mind as far as that pitch kind of happens. But it's definitely catchy. I feel like the moodiness of this project is pretty affable, I'd have to say. So it's a great concept to kind of see this. It was different from the fitting theme. It's different from the theme that I thought this project was going to be. So that's the concept about it. But Before I'm Gone, it's a pretty highlighted one. This is like a ghoulish kind of evening makeshift of a song, I'd have to say. This reminds me of Kanye with like a more gospel like doom factor about it, I'd have to say. So this is another highlighted one. Works pretty well with Friday Night Lights, the intro. I definitely had to say it's a pretty good ghoulish type pitch. Really like this. Reminds me of something that Kanye West would kind of do off of his Dark Fantasy album from 2010. I'd have to say it's a pretty great concept to kind of see that particular one. Just really like the overall pitch and ghoulishness type feel. There definitely need to be more songs like Before I'm Gone. This the real ghoulish and kind of grim and ghastly type feel. This really hits pretty heavily. I'd have to say this is a great one to kind of get here. So this is just kind of an original factor that works real damn well, I have to say. You Got It's a pretty good highlight. Definitely enjoyed this one. This is like a mid-paced kind of late day piano pep of a song, I'd have to say. It's like some work after hours haze, I would definitely feel like, and this is just a good vanilla commerce gem, I would definitely have to say. So this one's a little bit more down to earth, I'd have to say, but still a good concept just because you look after, but still a great concept because you just get some day after hours kind of malaise as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just kind of steadfast, this car and traffic type commerce as far as that pitch kind of happens. These are just kind of in between type songs that just getting, these are just in between type songs that just getting back to the house and things like that. Just the standard kind of drear and just malaise of just some of those type pitches, but it's just a pretty good concept. There's some piano type songs on here that works pretty well. I do like some of these piano type beats. It's just kind of a good concept to kind of see some of these just within a makeshift sense. But it may make you wish, some of these songs may make you wish for like a nightclub song, something like that. But these songs like You Got It and then like Home for the Holidays, some of those type pitches just have some similar type productions that just have some day after hours kind of malaise, but they work pretty well, I'd have to say. So it's this kind of concept. Best Friend is a pretty highlighted one. Definitely appreciated this one. This is probably one of the best songs on the whole mixtape, I'd have to say. Really appreciated this one quite a bit. Reminds me of Aaliyah. The chick on this particular song reminds me of Aaliyah, I'd have to say. This is kind of some soothing kind of day after hours R&B like malaise, I'd have to say. This is definitely a pretty excellent Chica's gem, I'd have to say. Great song for ladies, definitely. I feel like this is a pretty good kickback stretcher to kind of have just for some hangout after hours pitch, just within like 6:30, 7:30 p.m., some stuff like that. Good kind of summer boiler, something that like Tupac would do just in a more 2010s variation, something like that. Just some of those kind of summer stretchers that just kind of go along for some hangout haze as far as those pitches kind of happen with it. It's a great little song here to kind of have just within that pitch. Definitely need another song like this one too. There's just some ones that J. Cole kind of does on here. It's like the third song I listed, In the Morning, Before I'm Gone, Best Friend, some of these type ones that just kind of have a good pitch that you need like a clone of some of these type songs, but there isn't. But it's just kind of the concept that these work pretty heavily, I'd have to say. Cost Me a Lot's a pretty nice one. This is like an ambient kind of late day middle class makeshift haze, I'd have to say. This is like an ambient kind of late day middle class makeshift haze, I'd have to say. Really appreciate the concept of this particular one, and this is like some good regular evening commerce, I'd have to say. So this is a pretty nice one. Just like the overall appeal of this particular song. I guess there are some similar songs on this particular project, because Home for the Holidays, Cost Me a Lot, and because I'd say Home for the Holidays, Cost Me a Lot, and You Got It all have like a similar type pitch. Just some kind of more makeshift kind of day after hours piano type songs, just for that makeshift kind of haze as far as that pitch kind of has with it. These are just some good middle class type ones that work pretty well. Really like the kind of pep and just, I mean, there's just some, these songs I listed are kind of some blue collar type tunes, but they just do have like a certain amount of moodiness that's just very affable about them. It's just some good pitches to kind of get a lot of these. They just have some character and overall backdrop that just works pretty well. They're pretty affable and overall catchy songs, I'd have to say. Home for the Holidays is another nice one that's similar to Cost Me a Lot, You Got It, like I was saying. Good concept for this one. This is like a glazed kind of late day stretcher, I'd have to say. Definitely works well with like You Got It, like I was saying. Good concept for that sort of pitch, and this is just kind of an ambient hit, I'd have to say. Some good concepts. Really like the malaise of some of these particular type songs. This works within a sense. If you listen to the lyrics on some of these type songs, this is kind of the pitch that J. Cole just has stories to kind of say on these particular songs. This is definitely some fitting kind of moods on this particular album. The thing about J. Cole about this particular project is he makes you feel within the lyrics. He just has a little bit more of like ambience on some of these particular type ones that when you sense the glumness of these songs, it's not just the productions that kind of work, it's also the lyricism that kind of goes along with some of these. It's the pitch of just kind of being a little bit more hitting than some lyricists I can kind of think of in recent times. Some of these songs will have like bitter productions, but they'll just kind of be more rugged or stuff like that. But some of these just kind of have a lot more just kind of just like they just kind of tear at you a little bit, just in terms of the aspect of just having more meaningful kind of endearment just about them. It's this kind of concept, but I do like it because it's within I do like these lyricism of these songs because they're kind of within a moodiness and kind of malaise type pitch. So these work pretty well, I'd have to say. Some great concepts on these songs. And then Love Me Not's another song with that sort of malaise also. This is kind of like a peppy, kind of bittersweet springtime type malaise. Love Me Not's just kind of a peppy, bittersweet springtime malaise, I'd have to say. Pretty good hop and bop outing ambience, I would definitely feel like. So this is an overall nice one. Just like the overall like the appeal of this particular song, Love Me Not. This reminds me of something that Kendrick Lamar or Lil Wayne would do back in like the late 2000s, early 2010s, as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just really has that sort of appeal, and this is pretty dope for this. Some of these just really have some gleaming type appeal about them. It's just a good concept kind of get some of these. There's just some good strong album cuts on here that just work pretty well just overall with the pitch of just nailing some of these and just having some character, I'd have to say. So J. Cole does have an appealing character on some of these, especially when some of these have like some of these moody type pitches and just overall kind of just ruminate. I mean, I feel like I was kind of curious about some of these ruminating type songs and introspection on them, because sometimes it doesn't always pull off when you get some of them within particular pitches. But I do feel like a lot of this, despite the fact of it not being smoking music and kind of more stogie and swisher sweet and backwood type music, I would still have to say that the ruminating and overall introspection on this particular project hits pretty heavily. It's just a great concept. J. Cole really has a strength with these particular type songs, and they just work well. They're very affable, just have a good pitch, and just overall the characteristics behind these are just real. They're endearing and just have a good concept with the sort of malaise that they kind of have. It's just a good concept. So to talk about some of the songs I didn't recommend on here, basically there just were a cache of songs that just didn't really have interesting productions and just overall appeal. I'd have to suppose some of these were just clumsier versions of like the better songs that were kind of on here. I definitely feel like there needed to be more songs like In the Morning, Best Friends, some of those type ones, Home for the Holidays, some of those type pitches. Just the concepts of some of these were just not quite as affable as like they needed to be. Like I kind of felt like Blow Up was just a poor kind of turn up type song. Just didn't really have that engagement factor. It was just kind of one of the more awkward songs on here. I kind of feel like Too Deep for the intro was just kind of an awkward one. That was kind of an introspective type song that just didn't pull off the soulful type vibes that I was trying to. Soulful without smoking type vibes just don't always hit, I'd have to say. It was just kind of the concept. That one was just kind of a poor one. Looking for Trouble was just kind of a clumsy bonus track. It's too bad because it sounded like it had Kanye West on there and some folks like that. Yeah, I don't have the information about this album in front of me, so that's the concept as to why I don't know. But it's just the concept. There's like Pusha T, Kanye West, and folks like that were on that song. It just still wasn't enough to save that particular song. Some of these other ones, Premeditated Murder was just kind of a clumsy type. Premeditated Murder was just kind of a clumsy introspective type one. There's just some ones on here. The Autograph was just kind of a clumsy kind of upbeat type one that just didn't work that well. There's just some ones on here that just didn't really have the engagement factor just in terms of the concept of some of these. I just kind of felt like lots of thinkers type projects. Maybe J. Cole could have replaced some of the weaker type songs on here with like a nightclub song or like a stunt song, something like that. Just a more posse type song that would have had some gleam and just overall flash, some great moments. Some more lady songs like In the Morning, like I was saying, would have been a good concept to have got some of those. Just kind of the concept about it. But I'm gonna go ahead and score this album. I'm gonna go ahead and score this mixtape. Me recommending 10 songs out of 20 on here. I'm gonna go ahead and give this mixtape like a 6 out of 10. I'm raising the score because this is a mixtape and it's free, and this is a mixtape and it's free, and there is some quality on here. More than a few cuts that are actually pretty wicked and kick ass as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just some good concepts, some original carved out lanes, and some originality factors that just hit quite heavily. I'd have to say, just kind of the concept that these new angles are not exploited to the extent that they needed to be. There's a lot of songs on here, maybe a few more than there needed to be, just within the concept of fleshing out. I don't have a problem with the length of this particular project, but they did need to kind of flesh out and exploit some of the strengths that were on this particular project. They just needed to flesh out and exploit some of the strengths that were on this particular project, and this didn't really do the most excellent job of doing that, I'd have to suppose. So that's kind of the concept about it. So 6 out of 10. The social score I'm going to go ahead and give like a 6 out of 10 also, because it does have some steadfast kind of commerce, a couple lady songs, some stuff like that, but it's just not overall that full-blown kind of appealing just within the atmosphere of it. I feel like some of this ghoulishness does have its appeal, but just doesn't have like the overall social kind of affability. I'm giving it a 6 just because it does have some quality songs on here, and some of these are popular, and they're just in a mixtape market that works pretty well. Just kind of the concept that it's just kind of here and there. It's just kind of a more isolated type project, I'd have to say, but just has enough hits to where some of these are popular with the folks, despite the fact that they're not being geared towards that. So it's kind of the thing. So it gets a 6. In terms of future, like J. Cole's been working on stuff. He's on tour with Drake right now. It's interesting to see what's going to happen with some of his albums. I think he has like an album called like The Fall Off or something like that that's getting ready to happen. I am going to review more J. Cole down the road, so we'll definitely get to that as that particularly kind of happens. So I'd have to say this is a pretty good mixtape for the most part. It's kind of haphazard and like certain stretches has some good here and there type bops, has here and there. It kind of has decent kind of haphazard kind of appeal, but it is a pretty revolutionary project, and it does have some hits on here, more than 7 or 8 type hits on this particular mixtape, and I do recommend it. So it's some solid stuff here.